Hey guys, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to MBBS Study channel. Today we are going to have a lecture on topic of inner ear. Till now we have covered about the external ear and the middle ear, and then we are going to talk about the inner ear. So let's start our today's topic. So friends, today we are going to discuss about the anatomy, physiology and histology about the inner ear. After looking into these diagrams, you must have been worried, but don't worry. Be patient and watch till the end of this video. I am sure that you will be able to understand the concepts related to inner ear, and you will be able to draw these diagrams by yourself only. Okay, so be patient and watch till the end. So first of all, I am going to explain the exact location of inner ear, where the exact location or what is the actual position of inner ear, and then what are the parts of inner ear or what are the anatomical structures of inner ear. Along with that, I am going to explain the physiological function of this inner ear. Then we are going to discuss the cochlear system or the ossicular cochlear structure, and then the magnified structure of cochlear duct, and then finally some concepts related with the cochlear duct. Okay, so we are going to cover all this in this video. What is the position of inner ear or where is its location? In the middle ear, we have the tympanic cavity, and we know the tympanic cavity has 6 walls. On the medial wall of tympanic cavity, we have 2 openings that are surrounded by the membranes. Like there are 2 openings. What are they? One opening is known as oval window, or another one is known as round window, and they are both located around the promontory on the medial wall of the tympanic cavity. How these structures of the middle ear or the tympanic cavity are related with the inner ear? Listen, on the medial wall of the tympanic cavity we have the 2 window, and the 2 window, behind the 2 window we have the structure. This is the inner ear. Okay, so the structure that we are going to find behind the medial wall of the tympanic cavity, and they are related with the 2 window. What are they? One is oval window and other one is round window, and that opens or that structures are associated with the middle ear and the inner ear. So this is the structure that we are going to see behind the medial wall of the tympanic cavity. What is that? Yes, this is the structure of inner ear. So what are we going to have the structures that are present in the inner ear? As I have said, we have the semicircular canals or this vestibule and the cochlea. What are these? According to physiological functioning of the inner ear has been divided into 2 parts. What are they? One is auditory system and the second one is the vestibular system. Auditory system is responsible for perceiving the sound sensation, and the vestibular system is responsible for sense of balance of our body. So these 2 organs have their different respective function, different respective physiological function, and according to that they have different structures, and these anatomical structures relating with the auditory system is known as cochlea, and the anatomical structures that are relating with the vestibular systems constitute the semicircular canals and the vestibule. Okay, the middle dilated portion of the inner ear is known as vestibule. Next, let's read about the parts of the vestibular system first. Okay, so what are the parts of the vestibular system? Here you can see these are the 3 semicircular canals, and as you can see, these 3 semicircular canals have their different axis of direction. What does that means? One is like in this direction, it means if it is facing superior or anterior direction, and one is facing in posterior direction, and this semicircular canal faces the lateral direction. Okay, so just imagine that these 3 semicircular canals are placed in this manner. Okay, these 3 semicircular canals are placed in this manner. Respectively, the semicircular canals have the semicircular canals, and inside them they have the semicircular ducts. These blue lines with the dot structures inside the blue lines represents the semicircular ducts. Semicircular canals have the shape like semicircles, and it is connected with the dilated part of the inner ear, that is vestibule. Next, here you can see in this vestibule we have two structures. What are these? First one is the utricle and second one is the saccule. These structures that is present from here to here represents the utricle, and this structure represents the saccule. And to the vestibule we have a conical turning, or we have a conical spiral shaped structure that spirally rotates or spirally turns around the modulus, that is known as cochlea. This cochlea has been divided into three chambers, and the chambers are named respectively scala vestibuli, scala media, and finally the scala tympani. So these three are the important part of the inner ear. Here in this structure you can see this is the vertical cross section of the inner ear, and just imagine that the vertical cross section I have taken, it is like a curved direction and it is just like a spherical structure. This structure is like a spherical structure, and attached to it we have the structure known as semicircular canals, and this spherical structure not properly spherical, but it has the small dilation over its distal parts, and attached to this dilated part we have the cochlea. The axis of cochlea is in this direction or facing towards you, and this dilated portion of the inner ear known as vestibule is in like curved towards you. When I am going to have the vertical cross section, then after vertical cross section I am going to observe this exact view. Okay, so what happens, the middle ear have the middle ear cavity or the tympanic cavity, and we know the tympanic cavity has 6 walls. Okay, so the medial wall of the tympanic cavity has the 2 opening that includes or that relates to the inner ear. What are they? One is the oval window and the last one is the round window. The oval window has the opening right over here. Okay, if you are going to imagine the structure of oval window, and these structures are rounded like structures, and this whole rounding or this middle part of the inner ear is known as vestibule, and towards the right side I have drawn the cochlear structure, and towards the left side I have drawn the semicircular canals. Just imagine after the cross section what we are going to see, and if we have not done the section then it will be like in a curved direction. So if you are going to imagine that on the curved surface we have the opening that is present on the medial wall of the tympanic cavity. Okay, so on that curve we have here the opening, and that opening is the oval window, and right towards the right beneath the promontory we have the round window. Okay, so the oval window opens at the perinymph of the scala vestibuli of this cochlea, and the round window opens at the scala tympani of this cochlea. Okay, I'm going to explain that what is that scala vestibuli or scala tympani in the cochlear part. And behind this vestibule and cochlea we have respective nerve fibers or nerve branches that unites to form the 8th cranial nerve. And what is that 8th cranial nerve? That is vestibular cochlear nerve. So the nerve branches coming from this vestibule and semicircular canal that is present exactly behind these structures constitute to form the vestibular branch of the 8th cranial nerve. And behind this cochlea we have the ganglions, and that ganglions are present in the branches of nerve fiber that constitute the cochlear branch of 8th cranial nerve, and both unite to form the vestibulocochlear nerve. Semicircular canal and vestibule are the part of the vestibular system, and that represents the balancing, or that helps in the process of balancing of the body. These semicircular canals are nothing but these are the structures that are present in a bony covering. Okay, that bony outer covering is known as bony outer labyrinth or outer bony labyrinth, and inside them they have a duct that is known as semicircular duct. In one side of our ear, in one side of our inner ear, we have three semicircular canals. What are they? They are namely anterior superior. Okay, so this semicircular canal represents the anterior superior semicircular canals. This semicircular canal represents the posterior semicircular canals, and this is the lateral or horizontal semicircular canal. So in each inner ear we have three semicircular canals, and they are namely anterior superior, posterior, and lateral horizontal. They are present in a particular axis in relation with our sagittal plane. Okay, if these semicircular canals are present in a particular manner, then what is that manner? So let's see that. If you are going to imagine this line, or this vertical line represents the sagittal plane, and these three blue line box, or this red line box, and this green line box represents the axis in which they are present. Okay, so these three planes represents the axis of these semicircular canals. First of all, the anterior superior semicircular canal is present in 41 degree with respect to this sagittal plane. Okay, so this is the 41 degree with respect to sagittal plane, and how it is present? It is present anterolaterally to the sagittal plane. Similarly, the posterior semicircular plane is present in 56 degree, means posterior laterally 56 degree to the sagittal plane, and the lateral horizontal plane is present in 25 degree above the horizontal plane. So if we are going to see that this is the horizontal plane, and above 25 degree we are going to have our lateral or horizontal semicircular canal. This is the anatomical position or axis of the semicircular canal. Next, what do we have inside that semicircular canal? We have the semicircular duct. Okay, the blue lines or the blue tubular structure that you can see inside these black marked tubules is known as semicircular duct. What is their function? We will be knowing after some time. Okay, so moving towards the next structure, we have here the vestibule. Vestibule is made up of two structures, that is utricles and saccule. Here you can see that this horizontal structure is known as utricle, and this vertically positioned structure is known as saccule. Okay, so these two anatomical structure constitute the vestibule, and the cochlear part has the cochlear duct inside this cochlear canal. Okay, the black outline that you can see, it is the cochlear canal, and this cochlear canal have the cochlear duct. Now moving towards the histology and cytology section of this inner ear, you can see that this black line that you are going to see in this whole structures represents the outer bony labyrinth. Okay, this black line represents the outer bony labyrinth. It means that it is made up of bone, and the inner tubular structure or the inner blue tubular structure that you can see in this structure represents the inner membranous labyrinth. Okay, so these labyrinths are present inside the whole inner ear, and they are distributed in such a manner that they are going to have some space in between them, and these space are filled with some kinds of fluids. What are these fluids? First of all, the space that is present in between the bony labyrinth and bony labyrinth and the membranous labyrinth is filled with perilymph, and the in between the membranous labyrinth or this blue tubular structure, this whole blue tubular structure is filled with endolymph. Okay, so these are the perilymph and endolymph. These are the kinds of fluids that are present inside the whole ear or whole inner ear. Next, the cochlear part has been divided into three chambers. What are they? Scala vestibuli, scala media, and scala tympani. Respectively, the scala vestibuli and scala media is present in the white part. So as we have seen, this white part is filled with the is made up of outer bony labyrinth, and it is filled with perilymph. So of course the scala vestibuli will be filled by perilymph, and this scala tympani similarly have the same outer bony labyrinth histologically, and it is filled with that perilymph fluid. Now the scala media is present in between the scala vestibuli and scala tympani. It is filled with endolymph. What is that endolymph? Endolymph is rich in potassium. Okay, it is a fluid that is rich in potassium. It have the property like the cells. Okay, intracellular fluid. It has the property like intracellular fluid. Why? Because inside the cell we have rich potassium content, but here the extracellular material have the component of the intracellular property. What is that? They are rich in potassium. Okay, next we are going to conclude this cochlea as this cochlea has three parts, that is scala vestibuli, scala media, and scala tympani. Okay, so these three chambers, and these three chambers are fluid filled tubes. With the scala vestibuli is filled with perilymph, and the scala media is filled with endolymph, and the scala tympani is filled with perilymph. Okay, this fluid, the perilymph, is rich in sodium and have less potassium, whereas the scala media has the endolymph, and endolymph is rich in potassium and have less concentration of sodium ions. Similarly, the tympani is filled with perilymph, and it has high concentration of sodium and less concentration of potassium ion. Okay, so the scala media has the endolymph that is rich in potassium. The potassium ion helps in depolarizations of the sensory receptors that are present in these structures. Okay. Next, we are going to read about the physiological function of each of these structures. So considering this physiological functions, as we know, the structure of the inner ear has been divided into two, that is auditory part and the vestibular part. The vestibule is responsible for the sense of balance of our body, and the semicircular canal is responsible for the dynamic equilibrium, whereas the vestibule is responsible for static equilibrium, and cochlea is responsible for the sound or auditory system or perception of sound. For this sensation or for receiving these senses, we should have the receptors. So the receptors are present in the structures that are completely protected inside these inner ears. Okay, so what are the receptors that are present for this physiological function? For performing this dynamic equilibrium, we have the receptor that is present inside the ampulla. This dilated region that you can see in the vestibule, and it is most present at the end or the proximal end of the semicircular canals, and it is present at the distal part of the vestibule. Okay, so these dilated parts, here you can see these dilated parts are nothing but the ampulla. These ampulla have the crista ampullaris structures, and inside the crista ampullaris we have the cupula, and the cupula have the hair cells. So these hair cells are receptors that are going to sense this dynamic equilibrium. More specifically, the dynamic equilibrium means the semicircular canals have the function of maintaining or balancing during the angular acceleration, whereas the vestibule is responsible for linear acceleration. Okay, so the vestibule have the hair cells inside these utricles and saccules. These utricles and saccules have the special hair cell receptor for the regulation of linear acceleration. This utricle and saccules are similarly filled with endolymph. You can see this structure is continued with the tubes, or this tube filled with the endolymph. So the utricles and saccules are also filled with the endolymph, and that hair cells are present inside these utricles and saccules, and what are they called? They are known as macula utriculi and macula sacculi. These are responsible for static equilibrium. Okay, so you can understand from this that these two structures responsible for balance, and this cochlea is responsible for sound. Similarly, the cochlea have the hair cells in a very protected manner, that is the organ of corti, and that is responsible for production of nerve impulse that is going to generate the axon potential, and that will be passed on to the cortex, and hence we are going to perceive the sound. The semicircular canal have the function of angular acceleration. They are going to maintain the balance during the angular acceleration, whereas the vestibule is going to maintain the balance during the linear acceleration and gravity. Linear acceleration can be in a horizontal axis. Okay, the linear acceleration can be in a horizontal axis, and the linear acceleration can be in the vertical axis. As we are going to see the structures, the anatomical structures that are present in the vestibule, so that will represent the way of management, their way of managing the linear acceleration. As the utricle is present in a horizontal way, so it is going to regulate the horizontal axis, the linear acceleration that will take place in the horizontal axis, and as the saccule is present in a vertical direction, so it is going to maintain the linear acceleration in the vertical axis. Okay, so these are the functions or the physiological functions of this inner ear.